Hello again. So this is part three of color grading for photography. In this video, we're going to go one step further. We're going to take the midtones and the highlights and the shadows or dark tones from this photograph and transfer it to the one that we already did with the previous color grading. It's just an interesting exercise just to see what happens here, because this is actually in the end result is a curves adjustment. So it's not really color grading per se, but it's often used in fashion photography for making sure that you match the skin tones. So it's mostly concerned about your midtones, I believe, and the lights and the darks are much easier to find. Like in this picture here, there's the dark railing and the white, and the midtones is a matter of deciding where is the midtones or what sort of within in the range of midtones do you want to select for using for your photograph. So the way this works is we start with this image here, and I'm just going to delete a layer up here. Okay. The first one that I think we would like to choose here is, let's start with the midtones because they're the hardest to find. And there's a simple exercise that works for doing this. Under the select menu, choose color range. And so we're going to make a selection of this photo based upon color. And there's a box up here that if it's not set to the right setting, you can set it here from, and it can be set to any of these settings for the different colors that it will select. But we're interested in midtones. So make sure midtones is selected and that the fuzziness is right down to 0 on here. And then as you notice that we have from the whitest whites to the blackest blacks and midtones in the middle. So we want to select the section in the middle that is going to make sure that we have the midtones selected, and you know, you want a fairly narrow range, not a range this wide, but something like this. It gives you an idea anyway as to what you're going to get. So when you hit OK, we end up with this selection. And in order to make this selection work, we need to create a layer above the background layer, in this case layer 0. And the way that's done is just with a Command J. If you do Command J, it will insert a layer right above your background layer, which is right here. If we turn off the background layer, we end up with this photo here. So this is a selection of all the midtones that we had selected, with those two sliders being really close together on the color select menu. So in order to find the absolute average of these midtones, it's quite easy to do. You just go up to Filter and Blur and Average. And that gives us all these browny tones, which are the midtones in this photograph. So in order to want to paint this color on another layer, so we'll just select another layer and then go to this photo here, get your color, your eyedropper tool, and put it on one of these areas here where the midtones are. So we'll just select here and then grab your paintbrush, select the layer here, and adjust the size of your paintbrush so you've got a fairly good size, and just paint that color on. Okay, so there we have our midtones, and now we need to find the rest of the tones. So we're finished with this layer here now. So we'll just delete that layer and go back to here. And now we're going to choose our, and if you want, you can turn that off. We're going to choose our highlights. So take your paint dropper again and just click on an area. And if you need to bring your, how about just down here somewhere? Click that area there, select your paintbrush, go to this layer, and we can find it here, and just paint on your highlight tones. And then we'll go back to the photograph again, and we're going to select the dark tones. So we'll go to our eyedropper tool, and somewhere in here should be good, and click back off of here and select your paintbrush tool, make sure that's selected, and we'll paint our blacks. Okay, so we're done with this photograph. What we're going to do is we want to put this photograph onto the second photograph. And the way we do that is just by doing a Command C for copy that layer, go over to the second photograph and do a copy V, Command V, excuse me, and that will put those colors onto that layer onto the top of this photograph. There's a reasoning for all this. So now that we've got that, we can actually move this over if we want this layer. We just move that somewhere up top where we don't need it by just clicking on Move tool and making sure this layer is selected, and then moving it where you want. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to introduce a curves layer. And if you want, for convenience, you can always just drag that. Oops, daisy. You can just drag that box up here where you can see it better. So now all we have to do is just click on the highlight eyedropper tool. Just click on the blacks eyedropper tool and click on here, which selects it, and then onto So now we just have to create a curves adjustment layer. And you can just bring that into the photograph here if it's easier for you to do that. And now all we have to do is just select the black point eyedropper tool and click on the blacks. click the Midtone eyedropper tool and click it on the midtones, and click the white one and click on the whites. That didn't work. So now all I have to do is create a curves adjustment layer and start by selecting your whites, eyedropper tool, and click on the whites, and click your midtone eyedropper tool and click on the midtones, and click on your blacks and click on your eyedropper tool and then click on the blacks, and we're done. So we have a photograph now where we've gone from here, which was the original adjustment, to here, which is the adjustment that's taken into consideration a balance of the midtones, the blacks, and the whites of the original photo. And then again, you can always adjust your curves. You adjust your opacity. So then what you can do is you can adjust the opacity of your curves adjustment to bring in those wherever you like. And then if we look at the difference now, it's subtle, but it may help in situations where you have a problem with what's going on, and you may even just want to get a swatch of your you may just want to get a swatch of your midtones, and that's, I guess, yeah. So I think that's pretty good. You might find that useful. I didn't so much, but you just never know. There may be a special circumstance under which you want to do this. And anyway, you may have a photograph where you want to transfer those three levels to another photograph on its own, without having to do anything with the full color grading that we did on the original image. Okay, that's it for me.